Sunday, November 10th, 4 p.m. I mean, I think the Chiefs game ended at 3:58 p.m. I get this email. Come on, man. Look, I get your whole shtick. I get it, but it's terrible fit for the undefeated three-peat team. Being a sore winner is worse than being a sore loser. You going on Twitter to gloat and brag after every single win, so ugly and lame. Be gracious, be cool, all caps, be cool. This stuff's going to make everyone hate you even more. 6 minutes later, a team that has to have 9 straight second-half comebacks is not a good team. I know you're smart enough to know that. Not a good team. Forget a great team, not even a good team. So, yeah. God. So, I guess those, I think he's the captain of the Nick Wright gets under my skin team. But, yeah.
Well, I disagree with him there. I disagree with him on the Chiefs. This is one of the reasons we don't talk about the Chiefs. I happen to believe the hype about them. And if hype.
I was... they never lose.
They
never lose.
Well, I just don't tend to, I know there's randomness and variance, but I don't tend to look at success as accidental. And I look at, you got, there's luck. There's some luck in getting a field goal block at the end to win a game as they did. But guess what? The Chiefs prioritize special teams. And much to the chagrin of Anthony Mays and myself, the 49ers do not.
And I would argue there's luck in a guy missing a field goal. Blocking a field goal is execution. Now, I guess there's a degree of luck in everything.
Yeah.
But a guy lining up and just, missing it right, like Bass did in the playoff game against the Chiefs for the Bills, the Chiefs got lucky he missed that to a degree. But blocking a kick is your guy doing his job and going. And so this is a theme. I've said this on a few pods. I've said it on my show, and I'll say it to you here. Where I think sports media has gotten too hipster, if you will, is totally discounting the value of winning. So yeah. I agree that when people are like, wins are not a quarterback stat, agree that they are part of the overall picture, but they have to be contextualized. Got it. No problem. That there are advanced metrics that can better tell us about how good a player or a unit is. Totally agree. But how good is your team? The record's pretty fucking important. And so I think we've gone too far in the direction of wins have to be a team stat and they have to be not the end all be all. Doesn't mean that a team that's 8-2 is definitively better than a team that's 7-3, but it does mean that you can't slough off the record entirely as if it's just one of many data points, when for a team's quality, it's got to be the primary data point.
So you said a lot right there, and I'm glad you did, because I didn't know how we would even begin to talk about the Chiefs since we agree. And I think there's something big in that. And you can see how hipster analytics people, smart people arrived at this point of trying to divorce winning from the overall team quality. Point differential in a lot of sports is more predictive of future quality than your win-loss record. But once you go too hard on that, not only do you start missing some qualities that allow a team to perhaps win close games, but you start devaluing the sport as a whole. You start engaging in this weird new exercise where the whole point of the thing is no longer the point of the thing, and I don't even know what we're doing here anymore.
That is exactly right. And again, I do think that point differential is important. I do think that it's predictive. I am interested in, for looking into next season, all right, you were 12-5 and you were 12-5, but you were a 2022 Minnesota Vikings 12-5, and you were 2023 Baltimore Ravens. I think they were 13. But you know what I mean? You're blowing people out. Got it. Understand all of that. But I think that there is another level, which is teams that are proven champions and teams that we believe have great coaching giving them the benefit of the doubt of what they have shown, which is, oh, wait, is it possible that if I am coaching a team that every single year plays in the final game of the season or the second to last game of the season, that my objectives in October might be different than a team that's trying to establish itself as a legitimate contender. And so for that team, it might be really important. You know what? We're playing a bad team. We're going to absolutely lay waste to them, give ourselves confidence, announce ourselves the league, as opposed to a team that expects to be playing 20 game seasons saying, we're playing a mediocre team. We're going to use the first half to figure, to work on some things, experiment a bit, see if this goes in our gotta have it playoff run, area, or okay, shelve the double reverse to the 160-pound rookie. That one ain't going to work. And I just think that, and this is oddly, not to bounce around too much, this is a first cousin of my defense of Steve Kerr. When the Warrior fans, you just scream and yell and he's ruined everything and all that. I'm like, man, they have a lot of talent. I understand. I get it, Steph and Katie. But when we have seen some of the most talented teams ever, forget not win 4 titles, not win 1 title, not make a finals, implode, then maybe do we think there might be a little brilliance in simply his ego management, you know what I mean? The soft skills, and that maybe for a team this talented is the most important. Like I see it with people every year, the analytics folks, and again, I know I'm bouncing, are like, well, certainly this is the year Mike Tomlin doesn't have it. And by the way, I thought the Steelers weren't going to be good this year, but I believe in Tomlin. And they're like, well, yes, he did it last year, but here's why it was lucky. And I'm like, man, if you do it every single year, at some point that's not lucky. And I do believe in in sports in particular, some of the things that can't be quantified sometimes being some of the most valuable.
I'm glad you brought up Kerr, because I do think being around him back in the day revealed some of that, what goes on behind the scenes that is informing the strategy that goes beyond what we can see and what we can quantify. And I don't know if he's as open talking about it nowadays. It was different back then. But the entire way he conceives of a playoff series was different than the way I would look at it, or I would just reflexively assume it would be. I would assume you go into a playoff series and you're just trying to win every game, and that's all that's happening. And I win one and you win the other, and back and forth, and whoever gets to 4, that's the victor. That's how I thought about it. That's not really how he sees a playoff series. He really sees it more like a boxing match where eventually one side just gives out. Or maybe I could give a different analogy. It's arm wrestling, and one side is just tired, and it's just.
I like the boxing analogy one, or like you see it with. I don't know how many of your listeners are super into tennis, but like the goal of a high level tennis match is not to win every point. It's not even to win every game, and sometimes it's not even to win every set. It's to understand that the critical moments that are actually the fork in the road moments of that particular game or set or match, and have something extra in the tank or something you haven't yet revealed available there. This is the version of the LeBron game feel-out game. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to use, if we win game 1, awesome. But what's definitely going to happen is I'm going to obtain knowledge. Like, that is, this is also why the whole, like, Pete Rose betting on baseball. It's like, oh, well, if he was betting on his own team, why did it matter? And the answer is because a baseball manager's job is not to win every game. That's actually not what he's supposed to do. And, like, you have to view it in the super meta of, like, this is, every game is just one act of the play to try to get to our final destination. And Kerr's thing on, I'd never heard that put like that, but I immediately went to the 2015 finals where the fourth quarter of game 3, which the Cavs won, was actually when the series turned. That was when the Cavs lose game 1 in overtime. The Cavs win game 2 in overtime. The Cavs are blowing them out in game 3. And then the Warriors make a bit of a comeback, adjust the lineup, and then run away with the rest of the series. And by the time it got to game 6, it felt like, oh, this series over. The Golden State has won. And so that really makes sense given what you said about Kerr.
And he would even talk about it ahead of time. And you can say this because they won, but he would pull us aside and he would say, if they were down in a series, okay, the series is over. Here's why the series is over. And he only did it a couple times, but it happened both times.
The Tony Allen Grizzlies series, one of them.
That was all the players were saying it was over in the locker room the first time they did that and they took that game. They were saying, not on the record, but they were saying it's done. It's cooked. With the Bogut on Tony Allen thing, they don't really have anything. They don't really have anything for that. This one is over. But the thing with the Rockets, and I'm paraphrasing this whole deal, and a lot happened in that series. I think Chris Paul got hurt, but Kerr was saying, look,
conference finals. Yeah.
He's saying they're exhausted. They're exhausted. The way we're playing them, it's Harden, dribble. When you dribble, when you're watching as a fan, you're not really thinking about, hey, that's tiring. You're just watching a guy dribble, but it's tiring. That's a lot of focus. You are spending energy. They have to spend energy to hoist a lot of those threes. As crazy as that sounds, it's harder to get those up than it is necessarily to hit some of those mid-rangers that Chris Paul was so good at hitting. And lo and behold, game 7, the Rockets are just heaving those things. They can't get close.
It's 27 straight.
Yeah, I mean, it's dependent on circumstance, but there is something to that. There are things that I learned just being around him that made me go, oh, maybe Steve Kerr knows a little something about winning championships. As crazy as that might sound. I mean, maybe he knows something. I went in not knowing that he would have an edge, but maybe this isn't an accident. This just keeps on happening.
All right, that's right. I just that is why, to bring it back to the Chiefs, I just find, I said this on the show today, and 2 years ago, there was skepticism about the Chiefs, which is why when they played Buffalo at home in week 6, they were home underdogs. And that was because the Chiefs hadn't won a Super Bowl in a couple years. They had traded away Tyreek Hill. The last time you'd seen Mahomes in a huge spot in the playoffs was actually the only bad playoff moment of his career, the AFC Championship game in 2021. It's like, oh, okay. That was, you know what? That was legitimate, warranted skepticism. Got it. Last year, when people were like, oh, Chiefs are not the same. Yes, they had just won the Super Bowl, but they lost 4 out of 6 games. For the first time, we saw the team really struggle offensively. I disagreed with the take, but it was a defensible take. Like, oh, okay, they're not as good as they were last year. This year, they've played arguably the toughest schedule. They are better in any way than they were last year, and they never lose. And people are like, what's wrong with them? I think it's fabricated. This
is where I do disagree with you. I think people believe. I think you're looking a little hard for the Chiefs doubters. I think they've beaten us into submission by now.
They were underdogs to your Niners, who are not that good. They are underdogs. But this is a legendary great team in the midst of its apex. And so it's not that they're being right now. They have the same odds, give 10 cents to win the Super Bowl as Detroit. The Niners were the favorites in the preseason. They're underdogs this week to Buffalo. They have been, since they last lost a football game, Ethan, they've played 15. They've been underdogs 5 of them. 5 times, a third of the times. So it's not fabricated. And it's not And it's not that people are like, they're not good, but people are, well, they're not as good as their record is. And they are an unstoppable juggernaut, is what I'm here to tell you. They have the best quarterback in the league, the best defense in the league, the best coach in the league, the best special teams in the league. And so I think that while there isn't the level of skepticism there was last year, there to me still is. We are in the midst of something the NFL's never seen, and I'm not sure. And by the way, they might lose this weekend. I didn't think they'd go undefeated this year, and I still don't think they'll go undefeated this year. But they should never be underdogs. Until further notice, with a healthy Patrick Mahomes, they should never be underdogs.
I think people are just maybe tired of it, and maybe that's infecting some of the analysis. If I do agree with you that there isn't enough respect, it might come from that because they're more of a defensive team. I found myself rooting against them when I picked them in my survival pool. It was just reflexive. It was just Pavlovian. I couldn't help but root against myself in that way. And maybe that's infected the betting public, that they just, as with the Patriots back in the day, at some level, want to turn the page. And as much as people want dynasties, they also want to root against the dynasty when the dynasty is here.
Fair enough. I mean, that's fair. And people probably don't want to hear me wax poetic about Kansas City more. So we can do other things, but I think we're in a really, really special time in NFL history. And I mean, there haven't been 10 winning streaks longer than the one the Chiefs are currently on. And every single one that's longer is an all-time legendary team. And so while I don't think it would be good for them to go for an undefeated season, I also obviously don't want them to lose.